This is our news, the weekend edition. And on the broadcast tonight, a Grand Bahama resident speaks out about her experience in quarantine after being stuck in the U.S. Plus, the union that represents public workers concerned for the safety of its members. And a local bank pushing its customers to go digital.
Our news is brought to you by Alive.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Andrew Knowles. Thanks so much for joining us. One day after the government repatriated nearly 200 Bahamians who were stuck in the United States due to the COVID-19 lockdown, a Grand Bahama resident is speaking out about her experience. The young woman, who was flown back to that island yesterday afternoon, says while the process was far from perfect, she is thankful to be back home. Jasmine Brown reports.
Although it was a long process, it went well, it went smoothly. I felt compassion and professionalism from all the parties that took place yesterday. So I just want to say thank you to the Bahamas government for bringing us all home with dignity. And thank you, thank you, thank you.
24-year-old Daniqua Williams is one of dozens of Bahamians who returned to the country on Friday. Williams has been living in the United States for nearly a year after graduating from college with a master's degree in clinical mental health counseling. While she was working as a therapist at a substance abuse center, she says she was also preparing to return home to the Bahamas in recent weeks. But those plans were derailed by the COVID-19 pandemic and the Minister administration's decision to shut down the country's borders. Williams says she had almost lost all hope of returning to the Bahamas anytime soon. That is, until she heard Prime Minister Dr. Hubert Minnis' announcement about repatriation flights last weekend. The flights came amid controversy over the landing of permanent residents on a private aircraft. The arrival of a group of 6 on April 29th led to the resignation of Dr. Dwayne Sands as Minister of Health over what the Prime Minister termed a breach of protocol regulating the return of Bahamians and permanent residents. Williams says while she is happy Bahamians are now being allowed to return home, she thinks it was unfair to let foreigners in first.
So my reaction when I found out that permanent residents were allowed to land last week, I thought that was unjust and unfair because me as a citizen, I've been trying my hardest to come home myself for a few weeks now.
Williams described the process for registering to return to the Bahamas as not so smooth.
They didn't tell me until last minute while I was still at work in the middle of seeing a client that they called me and told me that I had to come over on the next day at 2 o'clock. So that was frustrating because of the kind of work that I do. It's very frowned upon to just leave your clients and with them being in such a fragile state.
On Thursday, Deputy Chief Medical Officer Dr. Delon Brennan said either the Ministry of Health or Department of Social Services will evaluate the homes of those returning, noting that those whose homes are deemed fit for self-quarantine would be permitted to return to their residences. Williams was one of those placed in a quarantine facility. Over the last 24 hours, quarantine facilities have been surrounded in controversy, with some claiming the accommodations and food are less than desirable. Williams says she has a much different experience.
So far, my experience in quarantine is good. I'm in a clean, safe environment. It's heavily guarded. Very heavily guarded.
Williams says now that she is back in the Bahamas, her work that involves helping others will continue. She is gearing up to launch Free Your Mind counseling services in June. She calls it an opportunity that was sparked by the global COVID-19 pandemic. Reporting for our news, I'm Jasmine Brown.
Meantime, Prime Minister Dr. Hubert Minnis will make a national address tomorrow. This will be Dr. Minnis' first address since temporarily assuming the portfolio as Minister of Health after the resignation of Dr. Dwayne Sands. Tomorrow also marks the 3-year anniversary of the FNM's 2017 general election victory. The national address will be carried live right here on RTV cable channel 212 at 5 p.m. Well, the Head Nose Foundation has been the victim of a few overnight robberies, according to Director Gina Knowles. This past month, she said the foundation realized that there were a number of attempts. She added, while they always implemented safety measures, they never thought someone would attempt to rob the foundation, whose aim is to assist persons in need.
It's unfortunate that we have had a few situations when people have tried to break in. We have realized that, yes, some of them have been successful. And it's not even like, in my opinion, if you need food, ask us for the food or whatever. But you could tell the specific things that they have stolen. And because of the fact that we're actually organized, we know when something's missing. And it's just really, it's sad, but as well as now we had to beef up on the security. So if anybody wants to donate to a security company, we need it.
As government embarks on the phased reopening of the economy, one union leader is asking that safety measures still be strictly enforced. BPSU President Kingsley Ferguson said it's important for workers and the public to continue to follow proper protocols in order to stay safe. Jillian Gray reports.
As the country begins its phased reopening, BPSU President Kingsley Ferguson said the health of workers is important and safety measures must continue to be enforced.
The country needs to be open. There needs to be normalcy to some extent so that goods and services can be rendered to the Bahamian public and people can move on with living their lives. And so the union endorses the reopening, but in a very careful way to ensure that the Bahamian public is safe and the Bahamian workforce is safe.
He added that many are getting used to a new normal as a result of COVID-19. The BPSU president said he is still concerned for workers in the medical field, maintaining that their health and safety is paramount. He is advocating for officials to ensure support staff have the proper protective gear.
They would have entered particular wards where the doctors and nurses would have been draped from head to toe, and they were trying to get them to go on the ward with just a mere mask. And so if I were to enter a ward and I see people dressed to that particular extent, I would want to be properly regaled to address whatever the concerns are, particularly if there's a patient that may have been isolated who would have been tested, but their results haven't been returned yet.
Ferguson alleged that some staff members were intimidated by management for refusing to enter wards that may have had COVID-19 patients. He insisted his members will not put their health at risk.
Persons had to refuse to go and address the sanitizing of those particular areas. And so I want to make a clarion call to administrators by and large that no support staff is going to enter any area that pose a risk to their health and their safety. And we're going to stand by that.
Ferguson said he was told that there was a concern that support staff would waste the PPEs. He took issue with that statement.
In connection with the health and safety of individuals, I don't see how a statement in that regard could be made if the value of persons' lives are being considered. So no amount of money can actually be worth the life of an individual. So let's spend that money.
Reporting for Our News Weekend, I'm Jillian Gray.
All right, thanks a lot, Jillian. Well, Scotiabank is encouraging its clients to go digital. Managing Director Roger Archer said the online platform during this time is important as it keeps the bank's customers and employees safe.
We've been trying to get customers to do their transactions at the digital channels. Those channels present an opportunity for staff and customers to be safe. There's no need to interact with anyone. You're doing it from the safety of your home. So we've been focusing a lot on digital transactions, and that will help our customers to be safe.
The COVID-19 pandemic has pushed more businesses to move to an online platform. Scotiabank's Director of Corporate and Commercial Banking, Greg Stewart, said many of their clients say the move has made their business more efficient.
We've seen pretty material migration from manual banking to electronic banking because it helps the client to get their transactions done quickly and helps them become more efficient at their own commerce. So we are seeing the clients recognize the benefit and are executing on, look, I need to get on electronic banking to help my own business work out. And it's working very well.
Stewart added that prospective clients can reach out to them for advice on how to get started or talk through challenges. Despite the push to take advantage of services offered online, bank officials are also warning customers to be careful when sharing information, as there has been an increase in phishing.
One other reminder to our customers is that if they receive text messages, telephone calls, email requesting personal information like their PIN numbers or passwords, we encourage customers to just hang up the phone and call us immediately to confirm if those calls are legitimate.
Well, still ahead tonight, how churches are surviving with less tithes and offerings. That story straight ahead. Next tonight, with churches being closed, Christian Council President Bishop Delton Fernandez said the church has had to adjust financially now that tithes have not been coming in.
We've been reduced in our staffing. We've had to, maybe some of us had to let some of our staffing go. We've been reducing our outreach because we don't have the financial capabilities that we had before, but we're still the church and doing the very best we can.
Some churches have been encouraging members to tithe via online banking, but for those who are unable to do so, you can now drop your tithes and offerings to your church office, according to Fernandez.
Something that most people don't know, that offices of the church in our last meeting with the Prime Minister can open from 9 to 1. So persons can stop by and drop their tithes and offering to their church offices from 9 to 1 p.m. in the afternoon.
Still to come, on local nonprofit struggles, but remains dedicated to helping those in need. So stay with us. Welcome back to our news, the weekend edition. Nonprofit organizations across the country have stepped up their outreach programs in light of the COVID-19 pandemic. And Teen Challenge Bahamas says its assistance has more than doubled as it continues to venture out into the community. Jasmine Brown tells us that assistance is going to people who never thought they would ever need it.
I am really grateful for the opportunity that I can come and give. You know, Teen Challenge has been existing now in Bahamas for 32 years. And be about helping the homeless. And because of this pandemic now, our house is full. We have a lot of persons to feed. But despite all of that, we are still reaching out to this community.
That's how Teen Challenge Director Eric Fox describes the tireless work he and his team of volunteers do every week. Despite the fact that their own financial needs are great and Teen Challenge is currently operating at a minimum, they are finding new ways to help out, thanks to donations by kind-hearted citizens. Fox and his team visit the less fortunate on a near weekly basis. We tagged along with him for one of his visits. He was eagerly greeted by those who say they desperately need the help, like Justin Forbes.
I needed it. Yeah, you know what I mean? Give me canned goods and things like that. I appreciate it.
Forbes, who is disabled and needs a walker to get around, says the help comes at a time when things have gotten even tougher during his already difficult situation. And he isn't the only one. 61-year-old Patrick Rose takes care of his elderly mother and hasn't worked in over a month.
She's like gonna be 90, Island 61, so, only so much I can do.
Rose says while things are bad, he realizes others have it much worse.
There's a lot of people right now hurting, hungry, homeless. As Bahamians, we supposed to, lift up one another and take care of one another, but some people doesn't. Some people just don't care. You know what I mean? But you show me that you're all really, lovable, you all got heart, you're all looking for one another.
Reporting for our news, I'm Jasmine Brown.
When our news, the weekend edition comes back from the break. The Bahamas National Trust feeling the economic pinch from the COVID-19 pandemic. So stay tuned. The Bahamas National Trust generates a substantial amount of its revenue through visitors to its national parks. But with the parks now closed and donations also taking a hit, the BNT, like so many other organizations, is beginning to feel the economic pinch from the COVID-19 pandemic. Executive Director Eric Carey says they now have to rely solely on government.
The national park systems are public spaces that are managed for on behalf of Bahamians. So we're the National Park Service. So we know the government has a lot of competing needs right now, but we're putting a case there that the environment is really very important. It's going to be an important part of our post-COVID-19 response, whether it's nature providing support and replenishment, or whether it's national parks providing areas for people to go and visit.
Carey said while they've had to lay off a few staff members, the Trust is already devising its post-COVID-19 plans to be ready to open once they are given the approval.
So we're devising strategies now to prepare for engaging people safely in our national parks. And so, yes, we're going to depend on the goodwill of everybody that supports us, including the government, to make sure that we can stay afloat and, more importantly, rebound. I have colleagues who also have been laid off, put on reduced time, so everybody's hurting, and we want to try and bring them back as soon as possible.
Well, that's a look at stories making news this evening, but stay tuned. Our weekend weather forecast is coming right up. And that's going to do it for us on a Saturday night. I'm Andrew Knowles. For all of us here at Our News, thank you for watching. Let's remember to be safe and look out for each other. Have a good night.